When people think of Tahiti, they usually imagine scenery like this and don't realize just how important the Chinese community is in French Polynesia, or that it is almost exclusively made up of descendants of the first Hakka immigrants who contributed to build what is today a very inclusive and cosmopolitan society in the middle of the South Pacific. I'd like to share with you today my family's personal story, as it closely mirrors the stories of many in the Hakka diaspora that migrated mainly from Guangdong province to Tahiti. The first 1,000 Chinese laborers arrived in late 1865, just over 155 years ago, to work on a cotton plantation that was meant to supply the U.S. during the Civil War. The plantation went bankrupt when the price of cotton dropped after the war, and most of the newly arrived laborers decided to stay in Tahiti instead of returning to China. My great-grandfather, Chingfuk Chong, was part of the second wave in 1896. He was only 16, the youngest of 6. His family put him on a steamer to San Francisco so he could send back some money. But as soon as he set foot there and realized how poorly Chinese immigrants were treated, he immediately got on another ship bound for the South Pacific. He arrived in Tahiti a few weeks later without any money, without speaking the language or knowing anyone. Within one generation, many Hakka had set up small shops and restaurants throughout the islands and started integrating with the indigenous Polynesians. As the Hakka started making economic progress, the French settlers launched vicious campaigns to stem the flow of what they called the Chinese invasion. One of the most vocal critics of the Chinese was a then unknown artist named Paul Gauguin. Maybe because of how many French treated the Chinese, my great-grandfather never learned to speak French, but was fluent in Tahitian. However, this didn't hold him back. He went on to start many businesses, including the first private bank in Tahiti. The building stands to this day and is now a Société Générale Bank. He also funded the first Chinese language school, and with a few friends, founded the Chinese Philanthropic Association. In only a few generations, Tahiti's Chinese population has become one of the pillars of the Polynesian community and economy. The story of the Hakka community in Tahiti is one of persecution, struggle, and ultimately triumph. Today, the Chinese community represents around 12% of the total population of 300,000 people, which is more than the local and metropolitan French communities combined. We are deeply involved in commerce, trade, tourism, and even politics. That's me when I was Minister of Tourism in the Tahitian pro-independence government. To this day, many in the Hakka community in Tahiti still preserve our culture and heritage. We honor our ancestors twice a year, in April and October, by visiting the Chinese cemetery. We also celebrate the Chinese New Year at the Kanti Temple in Papeete. Many Hakka in Tahiti hope to one day reconnect with their mainland relatives by traveling back to their family's village in China. I was lucky enough to do that in 2018 when I took my mother to visit our ancestors' mausoleum in Shenzhen for the first time. Thank you for this opportunity to share my family story.